All right, Math 108 students, wanted to give you this heads up on what quiz 3 is going to look like, since, last class we took the midterm and then we didn't have all that much time to do quiz 3 stuff. So I just want to let you know well in advance what the quiz will look like so you can be properly prepared. It will only have 5 problems. These are the 5 problems. And I'm going to work, well, it's not these exact 5 problems, but this style of problem. And let's work them. So here we're told to factor. So that means let's find the GCF, right? So when I look at that, it says 7x times x because it's 7x squared. And the 35x, I can view that as 5 times 7x. Then my GCF, excuse me, my GCF is 7x. That's the most I'm going to be able to get out of each term. And so that 7x factors out, and what's left over is quite literally all the rest of the symbols. So the 7x factors out, I'm left with x minus 5. What property do I cite to go from here to here? That's the distributive property. You're used to saying, oh, if I have this thing, then I'll distribute. And you would wind up right back here. That's also the distributive property. That's what people would normally think of. But just because we're using it in the reverse direction from what you're accustomed, doesn't mean it's some other property. It's still the distributive property. And this exact sequence of symbols is what I would type in for my answer. The next problem is to factor by grouping. Okay, so we have x cubed plus 7x squared plus 4x plus 28. Okay, to factor by grouping, I need to consider each of these groups. Here's this plus sign. That plus sign, that's going to go right there. Okay. And from this first group, well, then just looking at this pair, right, they have the x squared in common, and then what would be left over is the x plus 7. And then from this second group, it must be the case that I'm left with an x plus 7 over here. So then you see that a 4 is what factors out. And then we have 2 terms, right? By grouping them as we did, and then factoring out the GCF, it consolidated these 2 terms into just one term. So I have one term here, and I have another term over here. Each of them has this x plus 7 in common, so the x plus 7 will factor out, and this plus sign is going to go right here. And what's going to be left over after factoring out the x plus 7? It's literally all the other symbols. X squared plus 4. And so this x, the quantity x plus 7 times the quantity x squared plus 4, that's my answer. This x squared plus 4 will not factor any further over the real numbers. It would take another number system called the complex numbers in order to factor that, but we are not doing that in this course. Next problem asks us to multiply. I had said in class that to do this, I'm viewing this 7k minus 8 as just a single object, and it will distribute into the 4k minus 8. Okay. So when I do that, I'm going to have the 7k minus 8 is going to appear twice, right? Because it's being distributed in. Since the 7k minus 8 distributes in, there's going to be 2 of them, right? And when it distributes into the 4k, well, then I'll have times 4k, and when it distributes into the minus 8, then you'll have that 7, you'll have that thing in the white writing times the minus 8. Okay, well then you have 2 more distributions that you could do. This distributes here, and the minus 8 distributes here and here. So to do the first distribution, you'd have 28k squared, and then to do this one here, you'd have negative 32k, and when you do this one here, you'd have negative 56k, and then finally minus 8 times minus 8 would be positive 64. Put it all together, or rather I'll say combine like terms on these two, and you would have 28k squared minus, looks like 88k plus 64. And this would be what I would type in for my answer. Now I'll tell you, since you've worked this problem, you took these two things, multiplied them together, and got the form that's in the summation. It would be an excellent exercise then to kind of conceal the rest of that work and then start from here and try to factor it. You already know how it will factor because that's what you started with. And so I'm going to cover that up, and then let's try our little strategy to factor this thing. What's our strategy say? It says, well, we're looking for these two numbers, A and B, such that the A times B, whatever A times B is equal to, it should be equal to 28 times 64. Of course, that does not mean that A is 28 and B is 64. It just means that whatever 28 times 64 comes out to be equal to, that is also what A times B should be equal to. So 28, let's see, 28 times 64, I'm getting 1792. This is 1792. It came from the 28 and the 64. Okay. The A plus B is a negative number. It's a negative 88. Comes from this right here. All right. Well then, I'm gonna save a little room here and say that this is 1792. All right. I would not bother starting with, I wouldn't bother trying to factor this thing all the different possible ways it could factor. There's a bunch of different ways it could factor. It's going to be hard to keep track of them all. Instead, let's just look at the sum and talk about all the different ways we could add two numbers together and get negative 88. So I'll start off simple. How about minus 10 minus 78. That is certainly negative 88, and it has the property that when I multiply negative 10 and negative 78 together, I do get a positive number, but in this case I just get positive 780. So I know about where I stand. It's at least positive, but I've got, over another 1,000 to go, right? So I'll skip down on my list. Maybe I'll just skip by 5s this time. So I'll say minus 15. So I've subtracted 5 here. Then I'll add 5 over here, minus, and I'll literally say it to myself so I don't mess it up. Minus 78 plus 5. Well, a minus 78 plus 5 is a minus 73. And that does add up to minus 88. And let's see, negative 15 times negative 73 is 1095. Okay, so that's not my solutions. I'll skip by another 5, minus 20. So that's me subtracting 5. It's minus 15 minus 5. And over here it'll be minus 73 plus 5. So that'll be minus 68. That adds up to minus 88. But negative 20 times negative 68, let's see what that is. I still don't think it'll be enough. That's 1360. So we see this growing from 780 to 1095 to 1360, and we're looking to hit 1792. Okay, let's go another 5. So that was minus 5, and then here I'll do minus 5. So negative 25, so that was minus 20, minus 5, and then it should be minus 68 plus 5. And so that would be minus 63. That adds up to minus 88. But negative 25 times negative 63 is 1575. Okay, we're getting awful close. Let's try minus 30 minus 58. That's negative 88. And the product of those two, negative 30 and negative 58, there I'm getting 1740. Ooh, awful close. We're looking for 1792, we're getting 1740. So I wouldn't skip by 5 this time. I'll just go by 1, and see what happens. 1 or 2. I'll go by 2. That way I know if I missed it, I know exactly where it would be. If it exists, it would be the one before it. So minus 32, and then minus 58 plus 2, that's minus 56. And you're always wanting to make sure this adds up to minus 88, because if you messed up there, it won't matter what the product is, because it has to equal to minus 88. So minus 32 times minus 56. Let's see. Bingo. 1792. Now, since negative 32, since minus 32 minus 56 is equal to minus 88, then that's how I'll rewrite this term. Instead of it being minus 88k, it'll be minus 32k minus 56k, and everything else will stay the same, the plus 64 and the 28k squared. And now I can proceed by factor by grouping. So I'll get some of this out of the way. And I look at the first two terms. Or actually, just to show you that it doesn't matter which one I start with, I'm going to look at the second two terms. Sometimes it's easier to factor the second two terms. Say maybe, what do they have in common? I think it's an 8. I think it's an 8. But this is a negative right here, so I'm gonna factor out a negative 8. That way this winds up being a 7k, a positive 7k. That way I don't have a negative hanging out right here. And then of course this was positive, but I'm factoring out a negative, so it becomes negative, and you can see that if I had distributed this right back in, that I would be right back where I started at, negative 56k and a positive 64. Well, then it must be the case that I also have a 7k minus 8 over here. And so you can see, well, what you must have factored out to make that happen is a 4k. Then each of these two terms has a 7k minus 8 in common. And what's left over is all of the other stuff that it did not have in common. 4k minus 8. Now, after you get this far, have a look back at what you just did and to factor it, and what you did to multiply them together. In particular, I'm looking at, well, we'll take it one at a time here. So this is the summation form. Right before you combined like terms, or excuse me, let me say it like this. When you were right here and you were going to combine like terms to get this, look at how that's exactly what our little process helped us undo. We uncombined like terms. We were able to figure out how these two terms looked before you combined them by way of this system that we studied, that we found the solution to. Okay, so both of those match, and then look at the ones before it, at the step before it. It says 4k times 7k minus 8. And then it says minus 8 times 7k minus 8. It's exactly this same step. And then, you know, naturally right before that was the factored form that we started with, and when we finish our factor by grouping, that's the thing that we end up with. We wrote all of the same steps in the exact reverse order. This is what it means to multiply these two terms, or to factor this summation. Whatever kind of acronym you may know about some kind of aluminum product, that's not really math. That's just a shortcut of something that happens to be true, and it happened to spell out something. If you were ever curious about what's really going on, this is what's really going on, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're blessed. So just ignore that part and move on to the next problem. Factor this thing. They say trinomial. That's imprecise. What they really mean is it is a quadratic. Quadratic. The exponent on the largest variable term is a square. That's a quadratic. So it's not You wouldn't launch off on one of these processes just because it's a trinomial having 3 terms. You launch off on one of these processes when it's a quadratic. Step 1, though, is always to try and factor out the GCF. Well, here our GCF is 1. The GCF is 1 because this term doesn't have any v's, and this term, the only the coefficient is 1. So the GCF is 1. We factored out 1. Super. Moving on then. You could either just look at it. This one has a leading coefficient of 1. This one has a leading coefficient of 1. So the system is likely going to be very easy, and when people are able to just look at the problem and write down the factored form, this is why. It's because solving this corresponding system is easy, and then the resulting factoring by grouping has some trivial steps. So 2 numbers that add up to 4 but multiply to be negative 32, that means that one of these numbers, A or B, has to be negative, right? So you could say, 10 minus 6, that's 4, but when you multiply them together, you get, negative 60. So I guess move, how can I say, just one at a time. So I'll step down, that I'm subtracting 1, so over here I'll add 1. Minus 6 plus 1. That's still 4, and 9 times minus 5 is minus 45. So it's going in the right direction from minus 60 to minus 45, and I'm looking for where minus 32 is at. I'll step down 1 more. 9 minus 1 is 8. Minus 5 plus 1, that's minus 4. 8 minus 4 is certainly 4, and 8 times negative 4, that's negative 32. So you found the A and the B. Well, it will turn out that the answer will simply be let's see, what, you got a positive 8 there, so plus 8, and you got a negative 4, so V minus 4, and that's how it will factor. You can see that it would certainly do that if you went ahead and did the factor by grouping. You'd have V squared plus 8V minus 4V minus 32. Okay, and then from the first group of V factors out, you're left with V plus 8. And from the second group, a minus 4 factors out, you're left with V plus 8. You have to get V plus 8 over here or it won't be able to continue. Well, then the V plus 8 factors out of both of those and you're left with V minus 4. But that's exactly what we already wrote down. So when they have a leading coefficient of 1, that's a very easy and desirable case. Then the last problem, 14x squared plus 15x minus 50. This, again, is a quadratic because we have the x squared. Leading coefficient is not 1, so it's going to be a little bit tougher of a problem. If you can just look at that and factor it, you're a champion. The rest of us, including me, will be using this system because I really don't, I can't look at that and just figure it out. I don't even want to bother because I know that this will lead me to the answer every time. A times B, that should be whatever 14 times negative 50 is. Okay, well that will be negative 700. Okay, and then A plus B should be 15, a positive 15. So my product is negative, I need it to be the case that one of A or B are negative. I couldn't look at stuff like 1 plus 14 because 1 times 14 is a positive number. I'll have to look at stuff like 20 minus 5, because 20 times negative 5 is a negative 100. It's at least negative, not at all where I need it to really be. So how about I jump out to 40 minus 25. 40 minus 25, that's 15. And 40 times negative, I think it's 1,000. Yeah, it's a negative 1,000. So I know that negative 700 is in between minus 100 and minus 1,000. So my solution, if it exists, is also somewhere in here. Now, it will exist for you on this, it will exist here, it will exist for you on the quiz, because I have made sure that none of the problems, that every problem you're given will factor. There's not going to be any of them that are what's called prime. They will all factor, okay? So since it's not 40 minus 25, it's somewhere in between here and here, I guess I'll just split the difference and say this is 30 minus 15. And what would I get there? 30 times that, you get minus 450. So minus 700 is in between here and here, so then so must my solution be between here and here. I guess I'll try 35. $35 minus 20, that's 15. And I think we have a winner, yes. That adds up to 15, and its product is negative 700. So I have my A and my B. A is 35, B is minus 20. Very good. Now I'll come back over to my quadratic, 14x squared. Here's my minus 50. And the 15x I'm going to write as 35x minus 20x, because that would combine together to give you 15x. And then I'll factor by grouping. From the first group, the 7x factors out, you're left with 2x plus 5. From the second group, I have to have a 2x plus 5 over here, so then I can see that the thing that's going to factor out would have to be a negative 10. So messy. Okay. Then this 2x plus 5 factors out now, and all of the rest of the symbols go in here. The 7x minus 10. And now it's done. And that's all the problems on the quiz.